Jeff Power, it's been a long time. Welcome to the Digital Farm. You're here in Canberra for a meeting of stakeholders in the National Wild Dog Action Plan. Can you tell us about the program of the meeting?
The program of the meeting is to get all stakeholders around the table. That includes livestock producers from each state, the regulators or the relevant government departments in each state, and also people at the national level to work out a collaborative approach to wild dog predation.
So the whole approach to tackling wild dogs now has become a national initiative, and it's been going now, I think, for about 6 to 12 months. What's progress been like, and what are the outcomes going to be like?
Look, we are progressing by having this forum here today. I mean, that is progress. As you said, wild dogs are a national problem right across the landscape, from the east coast of Australia right across to the far west in Western Australia. And there's not a mainland state in Australia that isn't affected by wild dog predation. It goes further than the wool industry. Goats play a big part now as far as export goes. Where the dogs are rampant, the goats have gone. And I know of people that are in the cattle country now that have dropped their calving rate from, say, 80% down to 30-35%. And let's don't forget about the wildlife, the damage that they do to wildlife. And we've got to think about that, and it has to be a whole landscape solution to the problem.
When we get down to the management of wild dogs, then I understand there's a new approach, and that's to look at local areas rather than property by property. Can you tell us the backstory on that?
Absolutely. It's no good me going out and baiting my property if you, my neighbour, doesn't do the same. The dogs don't know boundaries, so it has to be peer group pressure amongst neighbours to get in a cluster and actually work together and all bait at the same time.
Wild dog depredation is one of the biggest threats to the wool industry in Australia. You come from the south of the dog fence in South Australia. Can you tell us about, in your local area, the experience that wool producers have had?
In my local area, just to the north and the east of Orroroo, where I am, over the last 12 to 18 months we've got about 20 dogs. Now, prior to that we were getting very few dogs. But the dogs are gradually moving south, and they've even moved further south than where we are now. And at the moment we've got 2 or 3 dogs in our immediate district that are actually killing stock.
Okay, and baiting is by far the most preferred strategy at this stage?
We've got to use every tool we've got in our back pocket, and baiting is one of them. It's very important. Ground baiting, aerial baiting where you've got inaccessible areas. Just because you're aerial baiting doesn't mean to say you stop ground baiting. Ground baiting is very important. And also trapping the cunning dogs that won't take baits.
Okay. Is there a mixture of domestic dogs gone wild and dingoes in the mix?
Correct. I think if you go up the east coast, the Great Divide, the hybridisation in dogs is great. There's very little purity left in the dingo along that area. The further north you go into South Australia, Western Australia, the Northern Territory, Western Queensland, the purity does improve. But I think it's safe enough to say that we're gradually losing the purity of the dog, of the dingo.
Okay, so with the action plan, where do you see us being at this very point in time? Where do we need to be, and how long is it going to take to get there?
We need to be working in a collaborative manner. It's going to take time. I don't think I can put a time on that. It's a huge problem, and Australia is a vast place, and we haven't got the people out in the bush that we used to have. Where in the pastoral areas you might have had 5 or 6, or even on the bigger places 15 to 20 people. In times gone by, today they're probably run by a husband and wife and maybe 1 or 2 workers. So we haven't actually got the people in the bush. So it's going to take time to get on top of the problem, but it's all about fighting back.
Are there any biological controls on the radar?
There's no biological control that I know of that is going to be out in the next year or so.
Okay, so we can't sterilise all the females or do anything like that?
That would be a huge task. I mean, in my state alone, I don't know how many thousands of dogs would be outside the fence, but there are thousands, and I know of properties that have actually shot 2,000 or 3,000 dogs in 12 months, and the problem's still there. So to take that on and sterilise the dogs, in my view, wouldn't be viable.